Hi, this is Joby Provido, and you're listening to Contemplating the Rosary, where we talk about how to pray the Holy Rosary even better. In 104 episodes, over 4 seasons, we will explore a method of how to say the Rosary the way Pope St. John Paul II, Pope Paul VI, and other Rosary advocates recommend, and that's by contemplating the mysteries while we say the Our Father, Hail Mary, and Glory Be. This podcast is based on the book Beyond the Veil, Contemplating the Mysteries of the Holy Rosary, available at Lazada in the Philippines and in print or Kindle on Amazon, wherever you are. Visit kindlingspress.com for more information and where you can read and download the episode guide. This is episode 3. I'm happy you can be with me again to talk about how we can pray the Rosary even better. Today we'll do another Lighthouse episode. This time I'll explain the actual method to contemplate on the mysteries. There's an overall technique for everything else we'll be doing in this podcast, and I'll introduce the 3 steps on how to ease into it. This is it. Are you ready? Okay, let's get to it. So here's the concept. The overall technique is this. We let our lips say the vocal prayers while we let our minds imagine the mysteries. Let me say that again because that's the actual method. We let our lips say the vocal prayers while we let our minds imagine the mysteries. So, 2 things should happen at the same time. Say and imagine. It sounds so counterintuitive, right? Doing 2 things at once. But if you remember in episode 1, we talked about how it's possible to say the Rosary on autopilot. You know, when our mind zones out but our lips continue to say the vocal prayers from mere muscle memory. We aren't thinking of what we're doing, and yet we can finish saying the Rosary this way. It proves we can say the prayers while our mind is doing something else. But what if we can use this to our advantage? Instead of our minds wandering off, what if we can train our minds to focus on the mysteries we're praying? So, to use this method of praying, don't worry about what you'll be saying. Your lips will do that automatically. I promise. Then, the thing to concentrate on is recalling the scenes of the mysteries. Just to review a bit, in episode 2, we said contemplation is putting ourselves in the presence of God. This recalling, this imagining of the scenes, this is the way we'll make the mysteries present to us. The important thing to remember though is, with contemplation, it isn't just a mere recalling, but putting ourselves in the scene. Now, this isn't a human invention. Actually, it's God who taught this to us. In the Old Testament, God asked the Israelites to remember the original Passover. It was an important event because it was the last night they'd spend under Egyptian bondage. It's the last night they'd be slaves. If you were a slave, I think you'd want to commemorate your freedom, right? That's why in most parts of the world, there's some sort of Independence Day celebration yearly, or something that remembers a day of breaking the bondage from some oppressive social structure. It's natural for us to remember important things. In salvation history, God asked the Israelites to commemorate their freedom from Egyptian bondage every year, through the Passover meal. Until today, Jews come together to do that. But it isn't a simple recalling. In Jewish culture, it's called zakar, the way of remembering by putting themselves in the scene. Essentially, what they do is they make present that night as if they were actually there. Now, the words make present should be familiar to us Catholics, yes? That's because the Church teaches us that the sacrifice of Christ is made present in every Mass. And we can trace this to the Last Supper. Our Lord commanded His disciples to commemorate His Passion. He said, "Do this in remembrance of me." Since it was the Passover dinner, the apostles, the first century Jews, understood that Jesus was asking them to do this type of remembering. So today, when we attend Mass, Calvary is made present to us in an unbloody manner. This type of remembering should be a good way to pray the Rosary also, that we make present the events as if we were there. That's the method. That's the concept. And to help us do that, there are 3 steps you can consider. Let's go through these 3 steps. The first is to announce the mystery. For example, the 3rd joyful mystery is the Nativity of our Lord. This small action might seem insignificant, but it sets up our mind to focus on that particular scene. I know I'm guilty of sometimes being lazy in doing this. I say it hurriedly or incompletely or in some garbled speech as if I'm so in a hurry. But we should say it as if we're announcing it to the world. Say it with bravado. It goes a long way in reminding us not to go into mere autopilot mode. That's the first step, and that's easy, right? Let's go to the second. The next step is to imagine the scene as well as you can, with all your senses. What you want to do is set up the scene in your mind. Let's practice this step on the presentation in the temple. I'll help you paint the scene with your mind. Imagine this. You're at the inner courtyard of the Jerusalem temple. It's an open area. It's day and the sun is high. The light is bouncing off the ground and you have to squint a little because everything is just so bright. The sun is beating down on your skin, making it hot. It's so hot you want to take a sip of water. Joseph is leading the way across the courtyard into the temple building. He is carrying a small wooden cage that has 2 birds inside it. Mary is beside him, and she is carrying the child Jesus, who must be about 6 weeks old. There's some activity in the courtyard. People are walking in and out, they're talking, but the large open area dilutes their speech, and all you can hear are murmurs, plenty of them. The Holy Family walks past the sacrificial fire pit on the left, where priests are putting animal victims in the flames. You can hear the crackling of the wood, and you can smell the wonderful aroma of burning fat. When you breathe in, you can actually taste the thick smoke that is a combination of meat and ash. It's like there's a huge barbecue going on, and the scent is making you hungry. That's it, short and sweet. I think that's a nice way of imagining the Holy Family going into the temple. We used all our senses in trying to put that scene together. And this is something we can do with all the mysteries of the Rosary. The first time you imagine a scene using this method, it might take some time to put the scene together. But in the succeeding times, it'll just come automatically. Another way of doing this is to ponder on the scene even before praying the Rosary. Imagine how it looks so when you pray the Rosary, it's ready to pull from your mind. In a food analogy, pre-bake it so it's easy to eat when you need it. Now, just as a reminder, painting a picture with our senses is not the goal of this type of contemplation. We do it to help put us in the scene, and that's the third step. So the next step is to insert yourself in the scene itself. You want to be part of the scene, not to interact with the characters, but to witness what is happening. So you can choose to be a background character, a non-playing character. Maybe in the fourth sorrowful mystery, you can choose to be one of the people lined up on the street watching our Lord carry the cross up to Calvary. Or during the Lord's baptism in the Jordan River, you can be one of those in a queue waiting your turn to be baptized by John. What you thought would be an extraordinary day becomes even more spectacular when you see the dove descend on Jesus and hear a voice from heaven. Sometimes, a scene like the Annunciation is more private. There are just 2 persons in it, and it would be just weird to put yourself in the same room. In that case, you don't need to be human. You can choose to be an insect, a bug on the wall, eavesdropping on Mary and the angel Gabriel. Another way to keep it interesting is to choose an unusual angle. So, if we went back to the carrying of the cross, you can choose to be a worm on the ground, so that when our Lord falls, he falls with his face hitting the ground. And as a worm, you can see a close-up of our Lord's face in pain. This is particularly helpful, especially when you want to gaze at the face of our Lord, as we will talk more about in episode 10. I can give you some more examples of this step so you get an idea of what else you can do. In the Nativity of our Lord, you can be one of the oxen or sheep in the stable. When our Lord is 12 and leaves himself behind in Jerusalem, you can be his guardian angel and see what he's up to. In the wedding in Cana, you can be one of the apostles sitting at the table with the Lord. I like to imagine the stories and jokes they're telling. During the crucifixion, you can be a bird hovering above and view it from the top of the cross. I particularly like this point of view when our Lord gives Mary to the care of John. In the post-resurrection appearances of Jesus, you can be St. Thomas when our Lord takes his hand and places it in the wound on his side. At the coronation of Mary, you can be an angel whose role is to sing at the event. You're part of the choir. These are just some examples. You're always free to choose what is most comfortable for you. Just as before, remember not to get carried away in this step. You might get too involved in the mechanics of this that it becomes a distraction instead of a means to focus on the scene. So, if the act of choosing how to view it prevents you from focusing, just make it simple instead. View it as if you were watching a movie. This third step should take a second or two. Again, through practice, it can even take a split second. So those are the 3 steps to put yourself in the scene. When you have the scene in your mind, you can start saying the vocal prayers. And as I mentioned earlier, don't worry too much on what you'll be saying because your lips will automatically do that for you. Me personally, I like to focus on the Father when I say the Our Father, and then I let my lips go on automatically when I start with the first Hail Mary of the mystery. That's when I start imagining the scene. At the end of the mystery, I focus again on the Glory Be. But again, that's my preference. You're free to start imagining the scene with Our Father all the way to the Glory Be. Sometimes there can be many scenes in one mystery, and next episode we'll explore how to move through different scenes. I think you'll find this really interesting because this is what keeps our mind focused on the mystery. Make sure not to miss this, okay? So, today's summary: let our lips say the vocal prayers automatically while our mind makes present the mystery. There are 3 steps that help us to do this. First, announce the mystery clearly. Second, imagine the scene with your senses. Third, put yourself in the scene. That's it. Awesome. I know you want to try this way of praying the Rosary or else you wouldn't be here. I also know it might take some time to change to this way of saying the Rosary. Trying something new is not always easy, but if you keep practicing it, it will eventually be second nature to you. And that's what we're aiming for. Let's wrap up this episode with another gem from Archbishop Fulton Sheen speaking about the Rosary. It might inspire you even more. He said, "It is a prayer that has a beautiful combination. I don't think there is any prayer in the world that has the combination of the Rosary. First of all, it is vocal. We say some prayers with our lips. Secondly, it is mental, because as we say, for example, the Hail Mary, we are not so much concentrating on the Hail Mary, we are thinking about the mystery. It is very much as if we were in a theater, and there's beautiful music in the back of a speaking voice. Now, the speaking voice is the Hail Mary, the music behind it is the meditation. Then, in addition to the mental of the prayer and the vocal, there's the physical, the movement of the fingers over the beads." End quote. What a wonderful way of describing the contemplative way of praying the Rosary. Words, contemplation, beads. What a wonderful gift the Rosary is. Before I go, let me remind you, this podcast is brought to you by thecatholictalks.com and kindlingspress.com, where you can read more articles on the Catholic faith and find more books on Catholicism. This has been Joby Provido. I'll say goodbye for now. And please join me again next time where we can learn to pray the Rosary better. Bye-bye.